Good morning. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 tells us this: do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. All right, so who's excited that we're in another election season? That is about the response that I expected. Perhaps nothing divides us quite like politics until college football season comes around again. Go ahead, look at the person next to you, give them a good roll tide. Go ahead, look at that same person, give them a good war eagle. There are just a few more Auburn fans than last service, but still not many. Maybe politics and college football, maybe that does top the list. But doesn't the things that divide us, doesn't that list seem to be growing and growing and growing? I think as we watch the news or even interact, it seems like we're just becoming more and more divided. In fact, some people would say that we as a people, we're more divided now than we've ever been. Pastor Tim has been leading us in a sermon series on relationships here on Sunday mornings. And I think we can agree today that all the division that we face, all these things that divide us, it's not helping us out much when it comes to our relationships. Our neighbors, our co-workers, the people that we interact with on a daily basis. I think we can say that all the divisiveness, it's not doing us many favors. Maybe even right now as we're talking about it, you're thinking, I could never be friends with someone who voted for that candidate or lives in that neighborhood or wears that jersey. I just can't do it. This morning, I want us to talk about the divisions we face, the harm that is causing our relationships, and what the Bible says is the best way forward. Before we dive in, I do believe it's important to know exactly what it is that we're facing. And it's true that divisiveness, maybe we're at a high watermark right now in our society. And in many of us, we want to solve this problem. We want to solve the problem of all the things that divide us. But I believe that is a problem in itself. That's an issue because the division that we face is not a problem to be solved. Rather, it is a tension to be managed. The divisiveness that we face, it is not a problem to be solved. Rather, it is a tension to be managed. When we were looking at the problems and tensions and the difference in the two, the classic example is work and home life. As long as I have a job, then I need to do my job and I need to do work. And as long as I have a family, I need to be an attentive father and do all those things. But it's not a problem to be solved. It's a tension to be managed. If I spend all of my time over here at work and doing my job, then I'm not going to keep my family. And if I spend all my time at home with my family, then I'm probably not going to keep my job. And so you see how this is something that's not going to go away. It is just something that has to be balanced. It's a tension that needs to be managed. So what does that mean for divisiveness? How is that a tension to be managed? As we get into that, I think it's important to know that the divisions that we face is nothing new. Sure, maybe it's a unique set of circumstances, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But it's important to know that we have always been divided as humans. In fact, we see in the book of Genesis, going back to the creation story, we read about brothers, Cain and Abel, actually sons of Adam and Eve. We see Cain, the first human recorded in the Bible, as actually being born He became jealous of all of God's blessings on his brother and killed him. So we see that our divisions, the divisiveness, all these things we face is nothing new. It has been around for ages, and I believe it's something that we will continue to grapple with so long as human life exists. So the division we face is not a problem to be solved. Rather, it is a tension to be managed. And so before we get into the details of how to best do that, I do want to talk about some circumstances that we face. Because as I said, there are some unique challenges that we have this day and age. Those challenges that we face, they seem to increase the conflict that we have. I heard a pastor not too long ago say that we are no more divided than we've ever been. We just live a lot closer than we ever have. He says divisions are nothing new. It's just that we live so close. Anybody had that problem? Your neighbors are just too close to you? You guys are better than the 9:30 service. Like there were a lot of empty chairs around. Like, oh no, you can't get too close. But that is a problem. The closeness that we have in our neighborhoods and all sorts of things, we just live a lot closer than we ever have. And so that's something that we need to consider. When I was growing up, I saw this firsthand. My grandparents, they bought a piece of property. It was 80 acres just outside of my hometown. And they decided that they wanted to develop part of that 80 acres to build a house there. In order to get to where, on the property where they wanted to actually build their house, they had to build a road to get there. There was just nothing but trees, just a very wooded area. And when I say they had to build a road, I'm talking they had to get tractors and machines, like the whole thing, cut down trees, build a path to this piece of property where they wanted to build their house. They built this road. They named it Amber Lane after my sister. And you should know that this road they built was about a mile long. So when you wanted to get to my grandparents, to the property where they were going to build their house, you turned off the nearest county road, the public road, and you had to go a mile back out into the woods to get to their property, to get to their house. My mom and dad also decided to build a house near my grandparents. And so growing up, I was able to witness what was a dirt road that my grandparents built some 30 years ago, and how that has developed. For an example, it was turned over to the county several years after it was created, and the county began maintaining it, and they paved that road. A major 4-lane highway came through, and it was not far from my dad's house. And so what you have then is people are getting closer together. In fact, we went home and we visited my dad's house just over Christmas. And as we were visiting his house, I noticed a lot of things, including about a dozen other houses on Amber Lane. So a road that my grandparents built just 30 years ago, though, about a dozen houses, including a business. Now, my dad was pretty upset about that because years ago, he had the ultimate privacy. Now, before I tell you this next story, you have to remember that I am from Mississippi, so please give me grace with this. But you knew that you had reached ultimate privacy with your house, and it was far enough away from everyone when you could step out on the front porch, and you could pee off the front porch without anyone else seeing you. And you could do that for a long time at my dad's house. But when we visited back over Christmas, I was sitting on the front porch with Dad. You could hear the traffic of the 4-lane. You could hear all the cars that were coming by. And even right in front of his house, there were a number of cars that were going by. And not only did he have no idea who the car belonged to, he didn't know who was driving the cars. He just didn't know. Maybe the saddest part of that story is, actually I have to go inside of Dad's house to use the bathroom. But that is just one example of how we have grown closer over the years. We're no more divided than we used to be. We just live a lot closer than we ever have. So what's the solution? Maybe we should just all move up to Paint Rock. We all get our own property and we just live off the land, get away from everybody. Maybe that's a solution. But I'm afraid even if we decided to do that, then we would still be connected. Anybody have a social media account? Yeah, see a lot of hands. Probably most of us have some form of a social media account, Instagram, Facebook. I love Instagram. And when we get on there, not only, even if you do live on the property by yourself, we get on Facebook and Instagram and we see all kinds of things about each other. It's very easy for us to see who our family is, get to see where we work, how we worship, all these types of things. If you were to look at my Instagram, you would see, of course, my wife, Kayla, my girls, the stray cat that we've adopted. His name is Lucifer. That's a... Oh, it's a girl, I'm told. She is named Lucifer. And so that's a story for another day. My 3-year-old named her. The only cat that she knew was the cat from Cinderella. And so she said, hey, this cat is named Lucifer too. But we could tell a lot about each other, even just by looking at our social media accounts. The world is getting smaller. We're closer knit. And that trend is not going to be reversing anytime soon. So what do we do then about all of the divisiveness? Again, I believe we have to see it for what it is. It's not a problem to be solved, but a tension to be managed. So then how do we manage our divisiveness? How do we manage that tension? If I had to answer that question in one word, it would be this: humility. Humility. With all the things that divide us today, I believe we could best manage the tension that we face if we approached those situations with humility. Now, as I was writing this sermon and I got to that sentence, in my head, I just imagined that one of you was just going to yell out, "Weak!" And I thought that because I believe we've come to a place where we associate humility with weakness. We associate humility with weakness. But again, I want us to challenge ourselves to ask better questions, to dig a little deeper. And one of those questions is, well, what actually is humility? There's a classic definition of humility that I really like. I believe this will be on the screen. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. We see this principle in the Bible, the verse that I open up with, Philippians 2, verse 3, where it says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others." Now, it's important to note here that this does not mean that we should devalue ourselves. It's not saying that our thoughts, feelings, our needs, it's not saying that those things don't matter. But what it is saying is the thoughts, feelings, and needs of others matter too. It's saying that the thoughts and needs, all the things that we face, we should put our needs second to our friends, to our neighbors, all that we come in contact with. We can value others without devaluing ourselves. But maybe you're here this morning and divisiveness is working for you. Maybe that's how you got a job promotion, or that's how you got to where you are in social circles. Maybe it's a working strategy. Why should you stop? Well, I want to challenge us this morning, as those who follow Jesus, I would submit that practicing humility is important because there's something bigger at stake. Nothing at all wrong with job promotions or any of those things, but when it comes to this, I think we have to think outside of ourselves. We have to think about our friends and our neighbors. And I think that's what's at stake here. For Jesus' followers, it is the welfare of our friends and neighbors. that it should be a priority for us. That is the mindset of Christ. And in fact, in that Philippians passage, we see a little about this if we read on down. And so we'll do that. Again, Philippians chapter 2, starting in verse 3 through 8. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In your relationships," and this is key, we're in a relationship series here. "In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient in death, even death on a cross." As Jesus followers, for those of us here this morning, we are following Jesus. He is our unifier. Following in his example of humility, that is the mindset of Christ, and that is what bridges our divisions. Now, maybe you're here this morning and you don't follow Jesus. Maybe you're exploring. Maybe you're just unsure. I'm so glad that you are here today. This church was created for you. Our vision as a church is we are a church for people who thought church was not for them. And so if that's you this morning and you're here checking it out, I am so glad that you are here. For those of us here this morning, for the Jesus followers in the room, that is our mission as a church. It is our mission to reach out to our friends and neighbors and those who don't know Jesus, and to humbly serve them. And you may be here this morning and you're thinking, but no, you don't know the people that I know. Like, you don't know the people I have to go to work with. You don't know my neighbors. You just don't get it. Well, I do get it, because I have to deal with a lot of the same people that you deal with. And it's a challenge. I'll tell you, for me, it is certainly a challenge. And I'm not always great at that. In fact, this may come as a surprise to some of you here in the room, but there are times where I can get a little snappy. I hear the chuckles, but there are times when something just rubs me the wrong way, and I tend to snap. Now, what happens in those situations, if I'm at home, Kayla can talk me off the ledge. Or if I'm here at work, what I'll do is I immediately regret whatever it was that happened, and I just go find Pastor Wade, and I'll say, well, I messed that one up. How can I do that better next time? And Pastor Wade, he'll tell me, after he finishes laughing at me, he'll say, well, hey, here's how you can do that better next time. I think everybody needs a Wade in their life. He doesn't give free advice, I was told, but it's good advice for me. And I think that's so important, because so many times we get caught in those traps of divisiveness. We let whatever it is that really pushes us over the edge, we let it get the best of us. And oftentimes when I think to myself, like, I just can't understand how someone votes that way or dresses that way or acts that way, I just can't understand it. That is the first part of humility, I believe, because what I'm doing is I'm admitting that there's something that I don't understand about that person. And at that point, I can ask better questions. I can dig a little deeper and find some common ground with them. That's what humility looks like. It's just taking the back seat. It's just taking a deep breath, whatever it may be, and humbly finding the common ground. That's important for us as a church, because we need each other. For those of us who are here this morning, for those of us who call Essential home, we need each other. For those of us, for those of you who may not call this home, maybe you're just visiting. for our friends, for our neighbors. They need us as a church. I do believe that we have an important role in this city to reach out, to be the love of Jesus for those who are far from God, for those who have those questions. And here's a really special part. For those of us here, we do call Essential home, we have a part to play in that, because as we continue to be a church for those who thought church was not for them, we will attract many different types of people. I think you can look around the room and even see that this morning. And so it is going to take us humbly serving those, because we're going to get a lot of different type of people as we do that. And that's what this passage, and I believe that's what humility is all about, is it's laying aside the things that cause great division. Whether it be politics or sports or whatever it is that divides us, laying aside those things, taking the very nature of a servant and uniting around Jesus. By humbly focusing on more what unites us, Jesus, and less on the things that divide us, I believe we'll begin to realize that we are uniquely equipped to reach others. And so this morning, I want to challenge you to think about what those divisions are in your life. What is it that's rubbing you the wrong way? What is it that just immediately causes you to cross that line that you know that you shouldn't cross? And to think about how we can combat that. One thing, I was talking about me being snappy, but you should also know that I am on social media too. As I said, I love Instagram. And so one thing that I've done, I actually saw this on Instagram, I believe there's a picture of the background of my phone. Reminder, the world needs less of your opinion and more of your help. And so I have that on my phone. And so that's, if I'm about to get on social media or reply to an email or reply to a text message, I have to remind myself the world needs less of your opinion and more of your help. And that's one way, that's one of those things that is just a red flag. Like, okay, how can I humbly go into the situation and serve my neighbor? Just a few questions for us to consider this morning as we close, thinking about what is it for each of us. What are those things that are causing division within us, with our neighbors and friends this morning? Maybe it's, I get along with most people, except fill in the blank. Or I'm a peaceable person, but blank really crosses the line for me. Or I just don't understand how someone could vote like that, dress like that, act like that. Maybe that's where your mind goes. And I just wanted to challenge you, and this is for me as well. What is it that's causing division with others, and how can we best manage that tension for the sake of the gospel? Let's pray. God, we are so grateful. God, we are so grateful for your Son, Jesus, who came and as a servant just humbly gave himself for us to give us hope, to give us peace. And God, I pray this morning that we would be able to lay aside whatever divisions have been formed with friends, neighbors, coworkers, those that we have relationship with or those that we hope to have relationship with. God, that you would give us the wisdom that we need. I pray that you would reveal to us what is causing division with others. And would you show us how we can humbly manage the tension for the sake of the gospel? God, I pray for each one here this morning. God, we each have our own personality, and each we're going home to different things, and we're going to work tomorrow to different things. And so I just pray that we would come together as a church and put aside for just a moment our own wants. And may we just think about what is best for the community, what is best for our friends and our neighbors, and how can we humbly manage that tension to show them your love that you have so graciously given to us. And we are so grateful for that. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. can I ask that you go ahead and stand with us. The altars are open this morning. And in fact, I would encourage everyone who is able to come down. Maybe there is something in your life. Maybe forgiveness is what's next for you. Whatever it may be, I just pray that you would just come down and pray about that. To ask God, what is it that's keeping me from this relationship or going further in this relationship? Because it is, as those who follow Jesus, it is our responsibility, it is our duty to reach out, even outside these walls, to our friends and neighbors. If you're here this morning and you don't know Jesus and you have questions about that, please come on down. You can find me there on the front row. I'd love to talk with you. Again, we are so glad that you are here this morning.